Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to V-Talks. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. Well, tonight we have our favorite doctor, Michael Wild, and he is going to talk to us about how to have a flatter belly for summer. So I'm going to bring him on right now, and hopefully, his dog Ralphie is with him. Hello, Michael. How are you?
There he is. We're doing well. Ralphie's panting a little bit because I just took him for a quick walk trying to get here in time, and it's only 90 degrees out, so he may pass out during our episode this evening, but I think he'll be okay.
And hopefully we have some puppy pads. we didn't do our business.
Yeah.
Right.
Hoping my lap will be the puppy pad, but we'll see how it goes.
I know. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I'm so
glad. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm so excited about our topic tonight that it's still not too late to get
Correct.
a flatter stomach for summer. So tell us how that's going to happen.
I know the summer is technically halfway over, but that's like a half empty, half full kind of glass scenario. So we still have half of a summer left, and it's not too late to try to look better in our bathing suit, right?
And it's always summer somewhere.
Well, this is true.
That is true. We're both pretty similar.
It's kind of like it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, and that behavior does not help a flat belly. I'll tell you that.
And that's a show I'm doing locally on Thursday. Anyway, I digress. All right. So we're a little silly tonight. I apologize to our audience, but hopefully they'll appreciate our humor. Okay, my friend. So let's, for the viewers that don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'll give you the fast, down and dirty, fast and furious synopsis.
Sure.
As Veronica told you, I'm Dr. Michael Wild. I'm a chiropractic physician. I've been practicing natural chiropractic neurologic methods for 31 years. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, which means I deal with rebalancing organ and gland systems, helping cell-to-cell communication, helping your body naturally control things like inflammation, dealing with toxicity in order to help your cells get the best energy production and best healing and repair for your body. And I'm also an avid biohacker, which means I use scientific tools and techniques to rapidly improve your health and performance. So as a chiropractic physician, I have a local practice here in Richmond, Virginia. As a functional medicine practitioner, I have a virtual practice. So I see patients or clients around the country every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I also run a cellular health spa and gym called the Biohack Zone, which is using all that cool biohacking technology to get everything moving and grooving in your body faster than you ever thought it could.
And Michael has been on the podcast for, how long now? 2 years?
Something like that. Yeah, we're getting 2 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know. And I very much appreciate it because I completely believe in what you do. I've been to your biohack gym in Richmond, Virginia. You've personally helped me. You personally help my friends. And I love what you do. And thank you so much. And I just want to continue to share you with the world.
Well, thank you for, number one, giving me the opportunity to help you. And number two, giving me a platform to share information to help other people, because that really is my mission, right? As you know, and as some of your audience knows, I lost my wife to a very aggressive cancer. And unbelievable to think it's almost 10 years ago now. That happened in 2024, it'll be 10 years. But in the process of trying to improve the quality and quantity of the time she had left, I was able to discover things about how the body works, how physiology works on a cellular level that no one had really taught me before. They had kind of beat around the bush a little bit, but no one actually talked and taught about how you can influence your cellular physiology to basically stop and even reverse chronic diseases, including cancer, if you just start early enough. If you wait until the very last minute, do everything wrong, and then throw a Hail Mary pass and hope for the best, chances are it's not going to work out in your favor, right?
But it could give you a better quality of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure.
I'm not trying to downplay that either. But my goal is to do a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, of course.
And some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight that relates to getting a better, flatter belly for the summer is also more important than that, because some of these things cause other bigger problems for you. And one thing that we can mention right now is that when we start developing excess fat, which can lead to obesity, that is technically an unnatural state of the body that only occurs if your physiology is not working right. So most people don't realize that the natural state of the body is to be lean. So if we're carrying excess fat around, especially around our abdomen, right, that means that something is not working right in your body. And it usually relates to a couple of core problems that go wrong. And those same core problems that lead to obesity also lead to all the top chronic diseases that people usually end up dying from in America. Cardiovascular diseases like heart attack and stroke, cancer of any kind, diabetes, dementia and Alzheimer's, and even over 150 autoimmune diseases. All these things have certain common denominators, and that's the work I do. I work at the level of the common denominator. I don't try to look at what's different about these conditions. I look at what's the same. And let's work with getting that to work better so that you can ultimately prevent, stop, and even reverse those disease states, as well as get a flat belly.
Well, let me ask you, can you be thin and still have a high percentage of body fat?
That is a great question, and I'm really glad you made that point. And the answer is yes, right? Mm-hmm. So we call that TOFI, T-O-F-I, thin outside, fat inside. Mm-hmm. And what that's referring to is that not all the fat that we carry around is visible, because it's not under the superficial layer of our skin. It could be deeper, inside, back around our organs. And that's called visceral fat. Viscera means organs. So if that fat's inside, wrapping all around your organs, that's extremely dangerous, because the fat itself produces biochemistry that increases inflammation, disease states, even raises your blood pressure. You may have heard of some of these chemicals because they were kind of buzzwords during the whole COVID crisis, which is cytokines. You may remember them talking about a cytokine storm, that type of thing. That might seem familiar to you. Mm-hmm. But cytokines are chemical mediators that the body uses to help regulate your immune system. And some are stimulating and rev everything up, and some are suppressing and calm things down. And these are commonly called things like interleukins or tumor necrosis factor or interferon. You may have heard of some of these things. Mm-hmm. So all these chemicals are part of what your body uses, along with your white blood cells for your innate inborn immunity, and your antibodies, which are part of your acquired immunity. All this has to work in balance for your body to be healthy. And when we build up that fat inside our abdomen that you may not even be able to see from the outside, inside around your organs, it really increases the development of those negative cytokines that create more destruction of your cells. And so when you develop a certain amount of visceral fat, that's going to increase your rate of heart attack, liver disease, kidney disease, cancer. Okay. So it starts as something called metabolic syndrome, which commonly means that your blood pressure is going up, your blood sugar is going up, your triglycerides are going up, and your waist is going up, right? So when we measure someone's waist, that has a larger role or play is a better indicator of the development of chronic disease than things like your blood pressure itself or even your blood sugar, because the waist will usually start to change even first, right? And when we talk about your waist, we're not talking about where the belt is, because you can cinch that tight under your belly, right? We're talking about where if you let it hang, what's the furthest point of your belly that sticks out? It's usually around your belly button, right? And if you measure around your body there, that's the waist that we're actually measuring. And
not the part that goes in.
Not the part that goes in.
We like that part. I'm short-waisted, so that's not what I'm measuring.
I talk to them, but people say, I wear a size 33 pants. But the reality is you have a size 44 belly. hanging over the 33 pants, right?
All right. All right. I'm listening. I'm going to
So-
be pulling it out. So is there like a, is there like a ratio? Like,
Yeah.
you know?
So in that measurement, right? So
Mhm.
if a man's belly around the belly button, when everything's really hanging all the way around,
Oh,
if that
boy.
is more than around 45 inches, that's going to be significantly indicative of increased metabolic syndrome risk.
So
And for a
that's
woman, it's
belly around
35.
belly button. 35 for women.
Yeah, and about 45 for men, right around there.
All
Right.
right. Yeah.
So if you have a combination of any three of those things where your belly is extending, right, starting to get bigger than your actual waist itself,
Yeah.
around where the belt goes, if your
Mhm.
blood pressure is going up, if your blood sugar is going up, if triglycerides are going up, any of these things together indicates we have metabolic syndrome forming. And that is the precursor, the ground rules of where we start to see this chemistry start to get produced.
Okay.
That's going to cause all this chronic disease. And so a flat belly is not only attractive, right, to most of us, but it's really important to your health. Now, we want to make sure that we're dealing at least with the fat we can see on the outside, but it could be on the inside too. And really the only way that you would know that, because you can't see it, is by using special tools to measure that. But the good news is those tools have become extremely inexpensive in recent years. So you can get a scale that you stand on that uses something called bioimpedance, which is a small electrical charge that goes up and through your body. And then based on data that you input with your age, your height, your weight, things like that, and the time with which it takes this charge to go through your body, they can do a really good estimate of how much of your body composition is made up of fat, muscle, water, and certain scales measure how much of that is actually visceral fat. So it has to do with electrical impedance and how hard it is for that to get through your body. And so it gives a really cool, quick measurement. And while that may not be super specific, it's good enough, right? The super specific technology is quite a bit more expensive. You'd have to use things like radiation, like a DEXA scan they do for bone density, and also can look at your measuring your visceral fat, or water displacement tests in a special
buoyancy.
facility. Right, buoyancy
tells you your can give you a body fat percentage, right? Because the more buoyant you are, the higher your fat content, right? Is that
possibly? It also depends on how much air do you have in your lungs.
true? Okay.
Right.
Mhm.
So if you have a good lung capacity and holding a lot of air, that will actually float. Right.
Okay.
So, but they do use a water displacement test for
That's what I
volume
thought.
displacement to actually check for that. So it's not so much buoyancy as it is how much water gets displaced. So there's some high-end mathematics that go into those calculations. It's a whole lot easier to buy a visceral fat analysis scale for $50.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mhm.
And get a very good, within like 1% of what the real number might be, to get a really good idea of where you stand, because the range is fairly narrow. 5 to 7 on those scales is the ideal number we're looking for visceral fat.
Okay.
Between 7 and 9 indicates we're starting to have a growing problem. Kind of the equivalent of if they were measuring your blood sugar and they said, well, you're not diabetic yet, but you're pre-diabetic. You have that level right before where we're starting to see things are starting to go wrong, but we don't call it full-blown diabetes. Same thing with visceral fat. We have this level between 7 and 9 that we say something's starting to go wrong, yet our government will still say that's within allowable levels for normal health. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. It means that something's going wrong, and this is the time to catch it. Between 9 and 11 is, hey, we got a problem, right? Kind of the equivalent of you've got diabetes, you've got visceral fat, right? Between 9 and 11. And then above 11 is severe, kind of like uncontrolled diabetes, if we're going to use that same analogy, right?
Sure.
So, of course, your risk of all those chronic diseases goes up exponentially the higher that visceral fat number, right? So what we want to talk about tonight are 3 things that not only will get rid of the unsightly fat on the outside and make you look better in that bathing suit for the rest of the summer and the rest of the year, but more importantly, it will also help eat away at that visceral fat. Right. So
right. Because that's a little tougher. That's a little tougher to get off, right?
It is. It is because
yeah.
it's caused by some deeper problems most of the time. And we're going to talk about what those problems are tonight. We're going to talk about my 3 flat belly secrets, right? And the first one that we want to talk about, which will help both the visible fat and that visceral fat, is time-restricted eating, also known as intermittent fasting, right? Now, I know we've talked about this a little bit before, and really everything we talked about before, but it's really interesting that if you kind of look at it from a different perspective, it actually ties into different health problems. But you're going to start to see, because I work with things at the core of cellular dysfunction, I'm going to talk about some of the common themes in different ways that all relate to that cellular dysfunction and cause all these different problems, right? So one of them is that on the whole, we eat too often here in America, right? So we've been brought up to believe that 3 meals a day is ideal, or a lot of people even do more, like 5 or 6 small meals throughout the day. And there's a lot of different fad diets and different things you hear on the internet that can get very confusing about what's the best way for you to eat. And the reality is it's different for different people, right? So there really is no one size that fits all, but we do know, because of human physiology, there are certain things that will affect you in a good way and certain things that will affect you in a bad way for everybody, no matter what, right? Sure. So one of the problems we have is we eat too often. So what's the big deal? Why is it bad to graze all day long, or even to maybe have 3 big meals a day? Well, when we eat the typical standard American diet, and we know we talked about that, the initials there, SAD, it is SAD, right? Because it typically leads to all the diseases we're talking about. Because every one of those diseases and all the cellular dysfunction we're talking about is directly related to your diet. There's no way around that. You can't eat junk food, you can't eat processed food long term and expect to be healthy. It simply doesn't work. And I'm not saying you can never have a treat. Of course you can, right? But we're talking about what you do 90% of the time, right? And you've heard me say it before, 90% of the time, do what's right for your cells, and 10% of the time, do what's right for your soul, right? And have that little treat.
And even you partake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like you have to live your life.
Right. What's the point of living a long life if you're not enjoying it, right? And eating food is very enjoyable for most people, right? And having those specific little treats, you make your day fun, right? You go out and have a celebration, you have a special dessert, it's a birthday party, you have some of that cake, right? That's all part of living, right? Yeah. But the problem is most of us eat some kind of crap every day.
Yeah.
Right. And what we really want to do is focus on eating healthier food. No surprise. Okay. We want to avoid the junk food and processed food. And we want to avoid a lot of the simple carbohydrates that are mixed into the standard American diet. Our diet is very carbohydrate heavy and very sugar heavy. Right. Yeah. And we know that sugar spurs inflammation at the cellular level. And simple carbohydrates, simple grains, convert very rapidly to sugar, which turns into an omega-6 fatty acid. And omega-6 fatty acids are very inflammatory to your cell membranes. And omega-6s are there for a reason. They're supposed to be a part of your diet, but they're supposed to initiate a little bit of inflammation so your body can heal and repair, start an immune attack. But when we have our diet that's so rich in these simple carbohydrates and sugar, that omega-6 level stays really high a lot of the time. It doesn't just kick up when we need it. It's always up there. So the healthier kind of fats that we want to be made up in our cell membranes are called omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, healing and repairing for the most part. And there needs to be a nice balance between the two. And in a perfect world, it would probably be a 1-to-1 balance, right? Where the seesaw is right in the middle. But even in an imperfect world, the good guys, the omega-3s, are so strong, they can handle up to 4 bad guys and still keep your cells ticking along just fine. Okay. But the average American is 20 to 25 to 1.
Yeah.
Not 1-to-1, not 4-to-1, 20 to 25 of the bad omega-6s compared to the good omega-3s. So, and that comes in large part, again, from eating too many simple carbs and sugar and eating too much of it throughout the day.
And then why is it so hard on your body to eat all day long?
You've got some great questions tonight because you're leading right into what I want to talk about. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I think we've worked together for so long. I know how this goes.
You're reading my mind, or you just...
It's amazing.
Right? So the
Yeah.
problem with doing that all day long versus just every now and then is that we have hormones that our body has to secrete in order for our body to be able to metabolize and use all that sugar, right?
Mhm.
So sugar, as we talk about, is inflammatory, but we also may remember from school that sugar or glucose is a primary fuel for your cells, right? So how can it be the food and fuel for our cells and also hurt our cells at the same time? Well, it's a double-edged sword, When you're burning a fire in the backyard to gather around the fire pit and have a fun evening, and you're throwing wood in there, everyone's enjoying that warmth that it produces and the light, and that's fun. But what else is it producing? Smoke. It's a damaging byproduct of the process of burning the wood, right? And even when a house catches fire, most of the damage comes from the smoke, not from the fire, right? So the smoke is very damaging to your cells, your tissues as well. So when we have to secrete insulin, which is the hormone that tells our cells to open the door and let that sugar in, insulin is an inflammatory hormone. It's also a fat storing hormone. So the more you're calling on that insulin, the more you're going to store fat. So if you're eating throughout the day, all day, you're asking insulin to come up again, and you're going to take some of that fuel and you're going to end up storing it as fat because insulin's going to usher it in, but also store some for future energy use, which is what we call fat, right? Fat is stored energy, and it's also storing something else, which we're going to get into in just a minute. But when we eat more than our body's cells can use for fuel, the rest gets stored as fat, right?
Yeah. And also, when you kind of think back to how we were designed, back in the day, didn't they have to catch the food in the morning? Like, I don't think anybody ate till later
True.
until the food came back. We didn't have refrigerators, right? We didn't have a way to keep the food, right?
Right. This is very true.
I
If you
mean,
look at,
I don't know. I don't know why I decided to go there, but why not?
well, no, I think you're correct. From an
Yeah.
ancestral perspective,
Sure.
the way our genes are designed to run our body, because genes, again, are your genetic blueprint. Give me 1 second. I'm actually going to turn the sound off my phone. I realized I didn't do that. And it's notorious. People will call me in the middle of this. Okay. All right. We're back.
Oh, yeah. I've been getting texts. I'm like, oh, boy.
All right. Still may get some noises, but I think I've got it.
It's all
right.
right. It makes it real because this is so real and live.
Absolutely. It's always spur of the moment, on the fly, but we have these great conversations.
It's all right.
So
That's why it's fun.
This is true.
Yeah. No editing here.
We were saying from an ancestral perspective, and genes don't change that quickly, right?
Mhm.
That our body was designed and based on kind of a hunter-gatherer kind of lifestyle, right? So food was not always available. It was available when you could find it, pick it, or catch it. So our ancestors did a lot more of this time-restricted or intermittent fasting than we do today, right? So today we have all this food available at the grocery store 24/7 from all around the world. Most of it's not local. Most of it is out of season for what your body is used to.
Sure.
And we're eating whatever we want all the time. Right?
Like bananas. What? You can't go out in the backyard and grab a banana off the banana tree in January.
Right, exactly. Right. So our cells are designed for this combination of feast and famine.
Sure.
But now we just have 24/7 feast.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the benefits of time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting is that we don't eat all day long. We shorten and make that eating or feeding window more narrow. Yeah. It's not hard to do. It really is not, right? You just have to start doing it and gradually cutting back the amount of time that you're eating in. Mm. So if you are used to eating all day long, so let's say that is currently a 12-hour feeding window, right? And the rest of the time is you're sleeping or you're waking up or going to bed, right? So if you just start to gradually start to reduce that, next week, make it 11 hours, the next week, 10, the next week, 9, and just start going down. Well, after a few weeks, you'll be down to around a 7 or 8 hour feeding window. And that's really what we're looking for, right? Which is still a pretty big window.
It is, and I try really hard not to have breakfast. I mean, sometimes people invite you out to breakfast, so you kind of have to do it once in a while. But I even try not to go because I just know how important it is to my body to not eat very often, because we've been working on that for a while, and it's made a huge difference for me. So Yeah, so that's what I choose. But somebody else might decide, well, they snack at night and they don't want to do that anymore, and they really need breakfast. That's okay, right?
Exactly, right. So it doesn't really matter what that window is in your day. You could you could skip breakfast or you could skip dinner, so to
Mhm.
speak, right? Because you're still eating that, you're just eating at a different time, right?
Sure.
So I'm not talking about eating less. I'm talking about eating less often.
Mhm.
So you can still have the same number of calories just in a shorter window, because
Sure.
that then gives your biology a break in those off hours to no
Mhm.
longer focus all the energy and digestion, which is very energy intensive,
Mhm.
but rather take the food that had already come in and been digested and use it for healing, repair, fighting bad guys, right? And burning up your fat. So
Yeah.
if you don't eat and that fuel is not available, your body has to go to the stored energy that it came in yesterday, which is your fat stores.
Mhm.
So the more of that time restricted window you have, the more your body's gonna be forced to burn off the fat for the energy to do the healing repair. Because healing
Right.
repair is actually a pretty intensive, energy intensive process as well, right? Building new tissues where they're damaged. So those are the two main energy draws for our body: digestion and immunity, which is healing and repair and keeping the bad guys out.
Mhm.
So if you take energy away from digestion, you're giving it to healing, repair, and immunity. But to do that, it draws your fat stores out for the rich source of energy. A pound of fat contains about 9,000 calories of energy, right?
Mhm.
So if we think about that, they said the average man needs 2,500 calories a day, the average woman about 2,000. Well, a pound of fat contains 9.
500.
Right. So if you're really trying to do calorie restricted, now again, I'm
If
not
you know, you know.
so again, I'm not talking about calorie restriction. I'm talking about
Yeah,
time restriction,
sure.
right? Now, that being said, we've all been taught when it comes to fat forming that it's a simple equation: calories in, calories out.
Mhm.
And that if you take less calories in and burn more up with activity, then you should automatically lose weight. And we do know that those work for a certain period of time and more for some people than others, but it doesn't seem to work real well long term for anyone, because there's a lot more to fat burning than just calories in, calories out. So it's not so much about the quantity of the calories as it is the quality of the calories. And that's going to bring me to our next two things we're going to talk about. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is, besides time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, which means get your feeding window down to about 7 hours a day. The next thing we want to do is be careful about what we're eating in that time, because we don't want to eat things that are inflammatory to our body, because the inflammation creates hormone disruption. And our body relies on 15 hormones for fat burning. 10 are found in your body and 5 are found in your brain, called neurotransmitters. And they're controlling all that metabolism or energy production from your cells. So fat burning is there to produce energy from our cells. If your cells don't make energy, they don't live, right? So if they have poor energy, they don't live well, which means they start to deteriorate and you start to develop symptoms and become sick. And then if enough cells die, eventually so do you, right? So energy production and a good source of energy production is really paramount to health, healing, repair, fighting off disease, and just being as healthy and energetic as you possibly can be, right? So we want good quality food that does not elicit more inflammation. Now, we've already talked about sugar and simple carbohydrates. And the reason you've heard me talk about trying to minimize the grains in your diet, and if you do show that your cells are inflamed from any of the tests that we do for you, then I want you grain free, because grains, even complex carbs, even complex grains, will break down to sugar and to omega-6. But the more simple that grain, the more processed it is, the faster it will do that, right? So I'm not against all grains, and people get a little confused about that because they hear me talk about being grain free often. I'm against all grains when you're inflamed, because it's all fueling the fire. Once you're in a healthy state and our tests verify that, then I say, enjoy some grains. I do, right? I just don't do it a lot.
Little
And you
pasta.
want to try, what's that?
A little pasta.
A little pasta,
Yeah.
right? Um,
That's, yeah.
so you want to be careful about the quality of the grains you're getting, right? So what are inflammatory foods? Well, it's different for different people. So
Mhm.
while we know that sugar is kind of inflammatory across the board, what a lot of people don't realize is that the food they're eating could be creating more inflammation inside their intestinal system, their gut. And when that happens, that creates a whole cascade of chemistry that leads to fat forming, immune system stress and burden, and breakdown of your tissues, and ultimately leads to disease. So, as you're probably aware, and most of our viewers are probably aware, almost all disease has something to do with your gut, And you may have heard that before.
Yeah.
But so
Well,
many,
from you, but I've heard it, more and more people are talking about it.
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So many problems start in your gut because your gut, your digestive system, I should say your intestinal system, because your intestinal system has four main roles. Digestion, so it is your digestive system, which is breaking down the food you're putting in, extracting nutrients from it if they're there, and
Very
making sure,
important.
right?
Yeah.
Make sure they get absorbed through the intestinal membrane and
Mhm.
into the cells where it gets used for energy, healing, repair, structural integrity, because you are what you eat and you make energy from what you eat, right? And that includes the macronutrients of your proteins, your carbs and your fats, and your micronutrients of all the various vitamins and minerals and the cofactors and the synergists that should be found in food to help your cells heal and repair. Yet, unfortunately, most of what we get fed today is what I call frankenfood, right? It was not really food. It's a food-like substance created by a food scientist and sold in a package
Pink
to make you
slime.
want more.
Pink slime.
Oh God, yeah,
Oh God.
right. So if you guys don't
What
know what
is
we're talking
that
about
even?
there, right?
Do we
Pink
even know
slime.
what that is?
That's a good question, right? Pink slime
Yeah.
was found there was a big thing talking about like McDonald's hamburgers,
They
and
still use that, right?
yeah,
Wow.
you and I have a mutual friend who has a store here in Richmond who knows somebody else who owns a restaurant.
We won't say what restaurant.
We won't say what restaurant. Someone owns a restaurant.
Uh-huh.
By mistake, the delivery from McDonald's down the block, a big box of burgers, got dropped at their restaurant, right? And the people working there just didn't really
What
realize
would
it was
they
different.
know?
Took everything out, put that out there. Well, they would use an actual grill, right, with slots in it in their restaurant versus McDonald's, which uses a flat grill, right?
Yeah.
Well, when they put those McDonald's burgers on the actual grill, they completely melted and turned to a pink slime that just slid through the grill and it was gone. There was no meat there, right? That's pretty scary stuff. I don't know if I know exactly what it is, but I know I don't want to eat it.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Because
Okay. Interesting.
it may start off as real meat, but it gets so processed and it's so fatty and so many extra chemicals put into it
Ugh.
to make it taste better and make it addictive because they want you coming back for more. That's the model, right?
Well, even the I don't want to Beyond Burgers. No, the what are they called? Yeah, Beyond.
Yeah, that's one of them.
They're terrible.
Yeah, they're not good for you either.
I feel like that's worse for you than having a meat.
Yeah, I am not against eating meat, against eating real quality meat, right? Not this processed crap. I'm talking about organic, grass-finished beef without antibiotics, without hormones, right?
Sure,
and guess what? That meat tends to be a little bit tougher, right? So sometimes when you cook that steak, you think, oh, this isn't a good piece of meat. It's actually a great piece of meat. You're just so used to everything being so fatty and so pumped up with the chemicals to make it tender and fed grains that have been treated with chemicals to make that animal fat and make the meat tender. Again, it's all about the sale. It's all about the marketing. You don't realize that's actually the crappy meat.
Yeah.
Right. So, and not to say that all organic meat is tough. I don't mean that at all. But I do notice that sometimes it is a little bit tougher because that's what the real meat really is. Right.
Sure.
Okay. So when I say that the inflammation causing foods are different for different people, that's because I started talking about the four roles of the intestinal system. Let me finish that. Digestive, elimination, right? What goes in must come out. So the good stuff goes in, nutrients go in, that metabolism of creating the energy is going to create byproducts, right? So not only smoke in our analogy, but byproducts, toxic waste, things that have to be eliminated, things that are of no use to the body have to get expelled. That also goes through that intestinal system, which packages it for excretion, right? Then the third thing that our intestinal system does is control our hormone balance. We talked about our fat burning being due to 15 different hormones. Your intestines play a tremendous role in that hormone balance and function. So the microbiome balance of the critters that live inside your gut, bacteria, viruses, archaea, yeast, there's a number of different guys who are supposed to be there, right? Yeah. They send signals to your brain to tell the brain about the balance of biochemistry in your body. They're doing a lot of that interpretation. Your brain then uses that information to tell your glands to secrete different hormones to either speed this up, slow that down, to get back to a more appropriate balance if things are out of balance, including maintaining lean muscle mass and lean body weight with low fat, right? So if you have a bad microbiome and your gut is inflamed, that's going to cause disturbance to your hormone function. And the thing is, you may never feel that. You may not have a direct gut symptom. You may, which is pretty darn common nowadays, right? Digestive symptoms are some of the top problems people complain of, but you don't have to have a gut symptom for there to be a problem there. The symptom may be your excess weight, right? Sure. Or a skin rash, because the gut is also a window to, the skin is a window to your gut. So it's the same tissue on the inside. So when your gut becomes inflamed and your body's trying to get rid of things, it often will come out in the form of a rash or irritation on your skin. Things like eczema, psoriasis, things like that, right? Now, the fourth thing that your intestinal system does is control your immune system. And that is extremely important, as we're talking about here, right? So all the healing and repair depends heavily on a healthy intestinal system. About 80% of all of your body's white blood cells, right, the foot soldiers, the patrollers, the scouts of your immune army, all live inside your intestinal system there. And they live inside a mucosal layer there called the gastric-associated lymphoid tissue. You don't really need to know that, but that's what it's called, right?
Thank God you didn't make me put that on the banner.
It's GALT, for short. ALT.
Okay, all right.
Well, all these guys live in that GALT layer because they are one of the first lines of defense against bad guys getting in, right? And most bad guys are getting in through the big holes that we have here in our face. And they go through that digestive system. And that's where they're going to either get absorbed or repelled. So we have a mucosal layer, a sticky mucus layer with certain antibodies in it called secretory IgA. And then right below that, we have this GALT layer of all these white blood cells. So we have double layers of defense going on there. But when our intestinal system becomes disrupted, when it becomes inflamed from things like sugar, but what other things that can inflame our gut? If you're excessively stressed for a long period of time, and it doesn't have to be horrible stress, it's just daily stress that doesn't let up, like you don't like a job that you have, or you're not in a happy relationship. That constant stress elevates your cortisol levels, your stress hormones, and that cortisol erodes that mucosal layer, right? If you've ever been in pain and you have chronic pain, like an old injury, that does the same thing. Now, let's say because of that chronic pain, you start popping ibuprofen, Motrin, Advil, Nuprin, right? Well, ibuprofen erodes and destroys that mucosal layer and creates more inflammation in the back door. Let's say that you have that hurt shoulder and you're popping ibuprofen and it's not quite cutting it. So you decide, all right, I'm going to make myself a drink. I'm going to have a beer or a shot of whiskey just to kind of calm my nerves. Well, alcohol erodes that gut lining, right? So it seems like some of the common things that we do in everyday life can be problematic. Now let's say that you decide, hell, I'm done with all of this. I don't feel good. I know what makes me feel good. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go get a meal at my favorite restaurant because eating always makes me happy. So you go there and it turns out that the dish you got was tainted and you end up with food poisoning. Food poisoning will erode your gut lining, right? So if you even have it just once in your lifetime, it can destroy it. Now, let's say you get that food poisoning, you have an organism there, and you have this recurrent diarrhea or even throwing up. You go to the doctor, and the doctor says, I'm not sure what you got. Let me give you some antibiotics. Antibiotics destroy your microbiome and erode that gut lining. You're starting to see a pattern here, right? So it seems like at least we've done at least one of those things, if not many of those things, and we've done them more than once, right? Well, if you have, you could be guaranteed that has in some way damaged your gut lining. Okay. So when that happens, that gut lining can become more permeable than it's supposed to be. So there are supposed to be little pores in that gut lining where digested food particles, which are itty bitty microscopic, can slip through, but the pores are so small, nothing else can get through. No big bad guys like a bacteria or a virus or a parasite. But when that gut lining gets inflamed and eroded, those pores become damaged and they start to get pulled apart and they get bigger. And when they get bigger, now food particles that have not been finished in the digestive process, so they're still larger, they can drop through. So when they drop through, now your secretory IgA gets fired up and your white blood cells in that gall layer get fired up because they don't recognize this big molecule. They think this must be a bacteria or a virus or a parasite because the food that we're supposed to get is supposed to be much smaller than that. So when that happens and it goes through those holes in that permeable gut lining, we call that leaky gut because they've leaked through, right? And we've talked about this before. But when you develop leaky gut, then the foods you're eating, even if they're 100% organic, healthy foods, can become inflammatory to your food, right?
What are the symptoms of that?
So the symptoms are very far reaching because again, some people get digestive symptoms. Some people get upset stomach, bloating, diarrhea, gas, or even constipation. It can alternate either way, right? Mm-hmm. They might get acid reflux or GERD, but you don't have to have any of those, right? Those are common, but you don't have to have any of those. You can have problems with your sleep. You again can have problems with brain fog. You can have problems with your skin, again, with rashes. You can have fatigue. Fatigue is a big one, right? Yeah. Because if all this is happening and you're not absorbing the nutrients well, you're not getting the right amount of healthy food in, your body's not breaking it down properly because all this has been eroded and inflamed, then your cells aren't getting the fuel for the energy, right? So fatigue is a very common symptom of all of this. But there are so many symptoms that can go along with it. It's actually hard to really diagnose this sometimes because it gets diagnosed as all kinds of other things. Because if your cells aren't getting fed and you're disrupting your hormones, what happens? You mess up everything, right? You mess up your thyroid. So your hair gets bad, your skin, your nails, you start to gain weight, right? You mess up your adrenal glands, so your stress response goes off. So you're jittery, you can't sleep, your cortisol levels are too high, you can't handle stress in a normal way, right? It affects your sex hormones. So things don't work in the bedroom the way you want them to, all right? That's another common symptom. And it can affect your sugar metabolism through your pancreas. And now the spiral just starts going around and around and around, right? Mm-hmm. So it's extremely common that people develop a food reaction. We call that food sensitivity, right? And you can get so bad that you kick in a lot of extra antibodies. We call that food allergies. So food sensitivities involve much more of that white blood cell reaction and more things like the secretory IgA antibody and some IgM and some IgG antibodies. Once it gets really bad and your body has a very large reaction to that, so it goes long down this process, then it develops IgE antibodies. And IgE antibodies are what we associate with true food allergies, even things that can become seriously bad, like anaphylactic reactions, like kids eating a peanut and their throat closing up kind of thing. But we're seeing a lot more food reactions to things that people never had reactions to before. So we know that nuts can be a problem for certain people, right? And as an aside, we may have talked about, I know we talked about this before, they actually think that part of that nut allergy problem, especially peanuts, is actually due to mold on the nuts and on the peanuts.
Oh, interesting.
They're very high in certain forms of mold.
Sure, because a lot of people are allergic to mold.
Right. And they think that the people are actually having an immune reaction to the mold, not so much the nut. Okay.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I have a friend that has a lot of these symptoms, but she has a metallic taste in her mouth.
Okay. So metallic taste.
What is that? Is that I don't want to digress, but the doctors are not.
That's actually fairly common. I hear that often, and that usually means that's a problem with your liver. So when you have liver stress, and again, the liver is part of this digestive process, right?
Okay.
Your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, your stomach, and your intestines are what we refer to as the gut. Okay. So it's not just your intestinal tube. So stress in this system will affect your liver. Your liver has over 600 functions, including the big one, detoxifying you, getting rid of this toxic stuff that doesn't belong. Well, if it's not effectively doing that, you can start to build up a backup of certain minerals that are supposed to be used in the processing of all this, things like copper, right? And that can create a metallic taste in your mouth, almost like if you ever put a penny in your mouth. That copper, you taste that like, ooh, that's right.
Yeah, she's, obviously gone to the doctor, and they're like, we don't know, they've run some basic sort of tests. And I think, how would that affect your white blood cell count if you had a copper taste in your mouth?
Well, it may or may not be obvious in your white blood cell count. Right.
Well, because hers, I believe, is elevated, but they can't find any reason why.
So this kind of stress on your system can cause kind of like mystery illnesses, right?
Okay.
Because it doesn't fit any particular model or group of symptoms that we call this disease or that disease. So a lot of people do suffer from what we call mystery illnesses because all the doctors go, we don't know what's wrong with you. We can't find what's going on. Or they say we can't find anything wrong, yet that person knows they feel wrong, right?
Yeah, right.
So
and they're looking for help, and they're not getting any, and just getting very frustrated with the healthcare that they're receiving.
Exactly. The doctors are typically not doing the right kinds of tests, which is why they're not seeing it. They're doing what they're used to doing that fits inside their box. But they're not often doing things like a micronutrient analysis to see if there is an imbalance of some of these metals that are supposed to be in the body, like copper, potassium, magnesium, right? To see if something's lacking, to see if there's too much of something, right? There shouldn't be an imbalance there. So that
should she be concerned?
Possibly.
And it's upsetting, anyway, to have that taste, right?
Yeah. And it does indicate that something's not right. And it typically does mean stress to the liver and or adrenal glands. And those two, again, also affect each other. Or a mineral imbalance, especially if some of the metals you're supposed to have in there, right? Sure. But you wouldn't know without doing a micronutrient test, or looking for things in the right way. That's why that's actually part of the foundational work I do in my functional medicine programs. I look at inflammation, especially at the cell level.
Yeah.
I look at micronutrient status, and I look at foods that create inflammation in your body. That's the lowest level that I do because that's so involved in so many problems that if you're not looking at those things, you really miss, a big part of the boat there. And when
I'm gonna have her just watch this podcast and reach out. I've already talked to her about reaching out to you, but because you've helped so many people. But it's frustrating, right? She's trying to get these answers and she's just not getting them. And she gets so upset. She doesn't even want to go to the doctor, but she knows something's not right.
Well, it doesn't sound surprising to me because I pretty much specialize in helping people who have not gotten help.
Yeah.
Right? So most people end up coming to me because they've been doing the traditional medical route and they're still not okay. And their doctor's not sure what's going on or can't find anything wrong, or tell them you're okay. It's in your head, which is extremely frustrating to hear when you know there's something going on, right?
Sure.
So not to say there isn't a strong psychological component to our health, because there is, but that's a topic for another day, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about inflammatory foods, and we talked about some of the things that can cause inflammation in your gut that would make your foods inflammatory to your body. So you would develop your own food sensitivities, okay? Now, the third thing we're going to talk about when you're done sneezing, couldn't hear it. Coughing, sneezing, not sure what. But the third thing we're going to talk about is some of the other things that can cause that destruction of your gut lining. And that is toxins in our environment, especially certain toxins that are called endocrine disruptors. Okay. So what is an endocrine disruptor? Endocrine means hormones. Right. And as we said before, all this fat storage and fat burning has to do with 15 hormones. Well, endocrine disruptors are toxins found in our environment and in our food that create imbalance in our hormone system. They disrupt our endocrine system. And a lot of these are endocrine mimickers. So these are chemicals that our brain and body think are hormones. right? And so it disrupts the balance of things. And some of these, I mean, they're extremely common now in our environment. And I have just a little list of some information I want to share because it just blows me away of how prevalent this is. And no one really gives it a lot of thought, it seems to me. Unless you go digging for it, I don't hear a lot about it. But they've done studies, and this made me think about this because the most recent one just came out this week about where they measured breast milk from 50 mothers across the country of all different socioeconomic statuses, all different races. And they found in every single sample of breast milk, they found certain endocrine disrupting chemicals. And the most predominant one that they found, they were surprised to find, were something called BFRs, or bromine or brominated flame retardants. So these are flame retardant chemicals made from a halide or a heavy metal called bromine, right? Now, those chemicals are found in all kinds of electronic equipment. So like your TV has it in it to help it not catch fire. All right. So the problem is that these things eventually erode and vaporize, and they become like tiny bits of dust, and you breathe them in. Right. And so they're found in everybody's home.
That's why I'm coughing right now.
Right.
Probably from my computer.
They're in computers.
Bromine.
They're in TVs. Right. So these BFRs, they're also found in flame retardant clothing. Right. So they found that the predecessor to this chemical was banned over 20 years ago. It's what they used to put on kids' pajamas, right, to be a flame retardant, and on different articles of clothing. But they found they actually created not only endocrine disruption, but they changed DNA function, right? So your actual blueprint, telling your cells what their job is, can change from these chemicals. So they're DNA disruptors. So the BFRs were just one of the more common ones they just found last week. So it kind of hit the news. It was like, holy crap, 20 years after we got rid of this other stuff, we replaced it with this stuff we find to be just as bad, and it's in everybody's body. So when they were talking about breast milk, we're not just talking about just the effect it has on infants. They're just showing that it's found inside the body and can be
and it's transferring through the breast milk. So
let's see, we're almost 20 years ago now. They did a study, and it's still cited, well, maybe 15 years ago, still cited very often, where they found over 287 different toxic chemicals in the blood of umbilical cords. When a baby's born and they snip the cord, they would test the blood in the cord. Over 287 toxic chemicals found in the average umbilical cord blood. Before that baby's even born, this was passed from the mother to the child, right? Now, of those, 180 of those were known to cause cancer. 217 were known to be toxic to the brain and nervous system, and 208 were known to cause birth defects. This is a serious problem, right? And believe me, it hasn't gotten better since that 15 years ago when they did a study, right? Wow. So I have a little cheat sheet here because there's so many of these chemicals, I couldn't remember them all. But I want to read off the names of some of these because I think you've probably heard of some of them, and we've talked about some of them before. But the first one they find a bunch of in everybody's blood is BPA, or bisphenol A. And we've talked about that because that's found as a lining in a lot of cans, right? So
you were telling me they're it's everywhere.
Or in your organic can of beans, it could be lined with BPA, and it kind of shoots yourself in the foot.
Yeah, you were even saying the to-go boxes.
Right, to-go boxes, right? So not only BPAs in to-go boxes, but things like phthalates.
The wax. Right? The wax. Is
right,
that what you said? There's like a wax.
Exactly. There's a coating to retain the heat, right?
And then the paper.
Right. So receipt paper, thermal receipt paper is very high in that. So anytime they give you that receipt that pumps out a little machine and it doesn't actually print on it, it kind of burns the image into it. So it's not using ink, it's thermal paper that is coated in BPA, right? Very, very toxic stuff. That's a major endocrine disruptor. So that will disrupt your fat burning capabilities. Phthalates are another one, and those are plasticizers found in all plastics, right? And think about how much plastic's in our world. Everything's freaking plastic, right? Everywhere. But the worst thing you can do is eat off of plastic or using plastic utensils, putting that in your mouth, because the acids and enzymes in your saliva break it down and release it and put it right into your body. Okay.
Or microwave, and then
right.
microwave.
Or if you heat it in the microwave,
in
or if you
the
freeze
plastic,
it in the plastic in the
freeze
freezer,
it.
that excess cold or excess heat leaches out these chemicals from the plastics into your food. And these disrupt your hormones, right? Then we also have dioxins.
All the stuff in the freezer case that you're getting.
Right.
It's in plastic. Then you heat it up.
Exactly. Never, please, never heat up something in plastic. I don't care if it says microwave safe. No, it's not. You think they don't lie? They lie every day.
Yeah, if they can get away with because it falls within the guidelines. So
right. And what they think is safe today, they know isn't safe tomorrow. They figure it out later. Right.
Yeah.
And they say it's safe because, well, it never tested as toxic. Well, that's because you didn't test it. So of course,
some of these things are banned in other countries, right?
They are. Many of them are. Yeah.
Yeah.
We allow so much more in our environment and in our food than they do in Europe and other areas of the world where they're much more stringent and I guess care more about their people. I'm not sure. But dioxins are the third most common thing found, and those are found in all kinds of pesticides and herbicides, right? And those are major endocrine disruptors. So it's on the food you're eating, right? DDT, right? Another major one. And DEET, right? So don't spray off on your body to get the bugs off. You are disrupting your own hormones. Not cool, right? And it goes on. Parabens, atrazine, perchlorate. Atrazine is actually an interesting one that also made the news recently a little bit because atrazine, and I may have mentioned this before when I checked my own water here at my house, the Environmental Working Group, EWG, go to their website, the Environmental Working Group. They have tons of great resources to tell you how to avoid these chemicals in your environment. And you can put in your zip code and they'll tell you what chemicals are known to be in your tap water, right? And I talked about the importance of drinking purified, properly filtered water, preferably with reverse osmosis, right? RO water to take all these chemicals out because the water treatment systems are not designed to take this stuff out. They're simply not. So it's still in there, right? So you can check your tap water, but they also have something called Skin Deep, which can tell you about which of your cosmetics and skin products and sunscreens have this stuff on it, because sunscreens have the oxybenzoates and things in it that are massive endocrine disruptors. The things we're using to block the sun and prevent skin cancer can cause cancer, can cause obesity, right? Can cause an excess belly fat, right? So atrazine, what's so interesting about that is that recently got brought up because RFK Jr., who's running for president, and all politics aside, I think the man is brilliant. I think if you listen to what he has to say, it makes tremendous sense. And he only speaks facts. People try to twist the facts and people try to create different, just like they do with all these chemicals and everything else. But if you listen to what he's saying, he's telling the truth. And he was talking about, as a long-term environmental lawyer, about his great concern about the things that are in our water. And one of the things he mentioned was atrazine. And I thought atrazine was very interesting because atrazine can be such a major endocrine disruptor that if you take male frogs and put them in exposure to atrazine, they will actually change their hormones so much they will become female and actually be able to give birth, which is kind of crazy, right?
Wow.
Because now that can't happen to people, thank God. Frogs are hermaphroditic where they have the potential to be male or female.
Sure.
But once they're born, that's decided and it doesn't change unless they get exposed to a chemical like this that actually disrupts their hormones so much that it flips it completely back and they can change from a full-grown adult male into a female and give birth, which is just crazy.
Wow.
Now, I know we're not frogs, but if we could do it to a frog, what do I want it doing to me? You know?
Right.
I don't want this stuff in my water, and I don't want to be ingesting it. So real important to avoid it where you can. And I guess if you're getting my gist, you can't avoid all of it. It's impossible. Yeah. It's everywhere. You just simply can't, right?
We just have to do the best we can.
Do the best you can and work at removing them. Work at removing them, right? Very important to do detoxification processes. And we did a whole episode on that, right? Where you can do mild daily stuff, or it's a much deeper 2-3 month programs to really get those deeply embedded chemicals out of your cells. because, just using milk thistle to support your liver isn't going to do it. Right? That's helpful, but it's not going to get these deeply embedded toxins out. There's certain protocols you have to follow to do that. So number one, avoid this stuff. And number two, you got to do things to get this stuff out, or else, you're really going to live a shorter life and a lesser quality of life, because you can't not do that if you disrupt your hormones. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Now, even what we don't consider toxins in our food, but these processed foods have a lot of concentrated endocrine mimickers in them, especially things made from soy, right? Yeah. So soy contains phytoestrogens, which means they are chemicals called genisteins that actually mimic estrogen in the human body. And estrogen is a fat-storing hormone, just like insulin is, right? Yeah. So when you eat soy-based products, and I'm not talking about organic edamame that came out of the ground and you pop a little bean in your mouth, right? That's not processed. I'm talking about when you concentrate it and process it, you highly concentrate those estrogens, create a large amount of the genistein in there, and that can tremendously affect your hormone balance. As a matter of fact, they have found that the amount of concentrated soy in infant formulas, because a lot of infant formulas have soy protein in them, the amount of genistein in there is 500 times the amount found in, say, a baby cow's milk, right? So they give baby cows formula for the purpose of fattening them up, and they purposely put soy concentrate in there for that purpose, and 500 times that amount is found in infant formula. So we wonder why we have such a fat population, right? All of these disruptors going on in our environment. So I know we're at the end of our hour now, and I just want to kind of
8:06, but we did start a few minutes late.
We did. So
we're still good. We're wrapping it up. We're still up at the hour.
If I may mention, there's a couple more chemicals because they're so prevalent, right?
Okay.
Parabens, right?
Oh yeah, parabens.
So parabens are found as a preservative in a lot of makeup, lotion, hair care products, shaving creams, all these things you're putting directly on your skin, but also in toothpaste, suntan products going right through your pores again, personal lubricants, right? Anything that's touching your mucous membranes, no matter where they are in your body, you have to watch out for these things, because the parabens they can actually signal things like testicular cells to die early, right? So they can lead to infertility. They can lead to things like breast cancer. So a lot of problems going on there. Then the phthalates we talked about, right? Also not only linked to endocrine disruptor for fat formation, but greatly associated with infertility again. And one thing I think is really interesting is most phthalates are listed on the label as fragrance. Most people don't realize that fragrance is 9 times out of 10 is phthalates, right? Or it's also found in nail polish. And you think, oh, what's the big deal? I'm putting on my nail. That's hard. Things you put on your nail get absorbed right through and go right into your skin and go into your body. Things get absorbed very easily through nails. So you have to watch out for that. And I'm not a big fan of synthetic nail polishes like that for that reason, because there's a lot of chemicals involved in there that are not great for you. So ultraviolet filters is another one that people don't think about. Again, the sunscreens, right? We mentioned this before, a little bit before, like the oxybenzone, benzophenone. These are considered ultraviolet filters, and they're sometimes applied in clothing. So the clothing can be a barrier, and especially in sunscreens. And they have been shown to cause gene expression changes, right? Again, disrupting your DNA, the very core of what makes you you, right? One more that I want to mention is triclosan. And triclosan, you might remember, because back during COVID, everyone was doing a lot of hand sanitizing, right?
Yes.
So, all the Purell and all that. And a lot of those products had triclosan in it. Triclosan is a germ killer, but it was also banned a long time ago for causing birth defects, right? But they still allow it in hand sanitizers, toothpaste, and mouthwash. Things are going right back in your body. I don't understand.
It doesn't
why
even make sense.
I guess I do understand it, because, this talks, right?
Yeah, of course.
So
we want the show. We want the show to stay up, but
right. That's why I'm not using words.
No.
Right. But we know how the system works.
Yeah.
Right. So things get allowed. And triclosan has found to cause allergies, asthma, eczema, food sensitivities, again, because this destroys, it's a germ killer. What are the good germs in your body? Your microbiome. And when this stuff gets absorbed even through your skin, or especially put in your mouth, like toothpaste or mouthwash, and it makes it down to your gut, you're killing the good bugs. When you kill the good bugs, you create intestinal inflammation, food sensitivities, more inflammation throughout your body, cellular dysfunction, hormone disruption, and it goes on and on and on. So just to wrap it up, and I know I kind of feel like I've put
I just want my belly flat.
And so again,
I'm so afraid now.
The 3 things you can do to
go hide in my
your belly
room.
fast, right?
I'm gonna go hide in my room.
And again, let me make this
Don't
clear.
eat. Don't watch TV. Hide in your room.
I wouldn't put you in ruin if I didn't have a way to save you. Okay? That would be unfair and inhumane.
That was funny. And I'm sure our listeners are thinking the same thing. God.
Right. So I know we've been going through an hour of talking about all the gloom and doom. I just want you to understand. Yeah. I want you to understand it's real. I want you to understand it's all out there. I want you to understand that you have the ability to avoid it if you know where it is.
Yeah.
Make better choices. Choose the natural products whenever you can. Choose your organic products whenever you can. Right. And you can do things and take an active role to improve these things and improve the way your body handles them, right? Do things like a cell inflammation test, a food sensitivity test, a micronutrient test, right? Looking at doing a toxic burden test. These are things you can do to determine how bad off you really are and what you can do to fix it, right? And it can be something fairly simple.
And intermittent fasting, that is like something you can do right here, right now. Just get started on it. You're going to see a difference.
Absolutely. And let me say, we were talking about skipping breakfast or dinner. If you want to lose fat the fastest, skip dinner. And the reason for that is if you don't eat past 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh,
that's your circadian rhythm changes your metabolic function as it starts getting later in the day. And your body goes into more of the healing and repair portion in that later part of the day than it does in the earlier part of the day. And most of it takes place in your sleep, right? All that healing and repair.
Do you think it's easier to sleep too if you stop eating at 4?
It does, right? So if you don't eat at least 4 hours before you go to bed, you make it much easier to sleep better.
Okay.
So, and unless you're going to bed at 8 o'clock, which is probably not likely, you got a little bit of a window there. So if you stop eating at 4 and you make your window earlier and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it doesn't matter as long as it's within that 7 hours, right? And stop at 4, you're going to burn fat even faster. Okay. Now I skip breakfast because with my schedule, that just works best for me.
Me too.
And I just have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, no sugar sweetener in there, right? Ideally no creamer because it has a little bit of sugar in it. It's going to kind of break your fast. If anything, you want a fat-based creamer, like maybe coconut creamer. Right? If you're going to use that. Black coffee is probably the best, or herbal tea without any sweetener, without any creamer is the best choice if you want something like that. Okay. I actually just got some mushroom coffee, which is made with organic Arabica beans and 5 different kinds of mushrooms that are great for brain function, immunity, just helping your entire body function at a higher level. And it only has half the caffeine of a normal cup of coffee, but all the mushrooms are actually energizing as well. And so you have all these different alternatives of things you can use, and it actually tasted really good just all by itself, right? Without anything added to it.
Post a link for that.
Yeah, we can. So the one I used was called Ryze, R-Y-Z-E.
Did I send you that link? I asked you about that one, I think.
Did you?
Saw it. I think I did. Yeah, you said, thumbs up, but I didn't know if that meant yes, that particular one.
Yeah, so that's, and there are different ones, right? But that's the one that I actually, and I'm sorry, I don't remember you sending that link, but
yeah, because it was like in a post, like it was like in a comment thing. Probably didn't even know it was me, honestly.
I probably haven't had enough mushrooms to jog my memory to. And I kind of do remember that now when you talked about it. It was a little while back.
And you said thumbs up, but I didn't know if that particular brand was the one you liked.
Yeah, yep, so that's a good one.
I'm starting to also. I'm trying to cut back on my alcohol intake and maybe replace that with those drinks that are they're mocktails, but they
Right,
have
herbal
like,
adaptogenic mocktails.
yeah, I've never really had one, so I don't.
Mhm.
But I ordered some online just to give it a twirl because they don't have sugar. So
Right. Yeah,
um,
most of those are very tasty, and they can have a very calming effect on the body or a
so
focusing
they
effect depending on which herbs are being used. And
okay.
so,
So
yeah,
you feel like there's a difference after you drink one.
usually, right? So that's what I say. It's kind of like, most people are having a drink with friends to be social and maybe to
Yeah.
calm down, do stress from their day because it can, one or two drinks is a little calming. You have more than that, you're going to start creating bigger issues, right? And changing your physiology. But the concept behind the herbal adaptogenic
Mhm.
mocktails is they have a little bit of a calming, I won't say euphoric feeling really, but it could be, soothe your nerves, right? So you just feel like, okay, cool. And now I can socialize. And you have that glass in your hand that I call the social lubricant, right? It makes it
Yeah,
kind
you
of peaceful.
feel, yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's just sometimes, you want to be social, but then you don't want to not seem like, you know, you're partaking, and I like alcohol, I'm not going to lie. But I just think that I don't want to drink so much. So
Right,
how can I still be
right.
social and, you know,
Exactly. Exactly. Like what
so,
I've started doing a lot is if I'm out with friends, I try not to stay out too late because to stay out too late just means you're going to have another drink, right? Because you're
oh
there,
yeah,
right?
of course.
So I
Yeah.
try to keep the window shorter. And if everyone's saying, okay, we're going here next, I say, okay, see you later. And I'm out,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But I'll also try to purposely, of course, I don't want to drink necessarily the tap water, right? So I would say like have a drink, have a glass of water. So I always see if they do have any kind of like sparkling water, right? Because that's going to usually be a spring water that's got some electrolytes in it.
Mhm.
So I'd like to alternate that with a drink, or at the bare minimum, get a seltzer, right, from the tap,
Mhm.
and add a little spritz of cranberry and put a lime in it, and that tastes really good, and it looks like you're having a drink. So no one is
Yeah,
like, "Why are you having a drink?" Well, that's
yeah,
social
and you don't,
peer pressure.
because and when you like to drink, then you're like, "Oh, okay, I'll just have one more, or I'll just have one." So, yeah, if you could just, I also ordered. I'll let you know what they are when they come in, but they're packets, so you can take them out,
Okay,
and they're packets of whatever this is, and you just put them in your
just
drink or
mix them
in
into your
water.
drink.
So when you're out, you just make them that way too. I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying different methods. We have a question.
So I've not heard of Dandy Blend. I'm going to guess that's made with dandelions, just based on the name. I do know there's dandelion teas and coffee substitutes made from dandelion, which are actually really healthy and good for you. And dandelion is a good detoxifying agent, especially for your kidneys. It helps with a lot of excess water retention, flushing water out. So I'm not familiar with Dandy Blend itself, but that is definitely another option.
And we have Deb Frayne. She loves Rise mushroom coffee, so
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
true. All right, Deb, I'm gonna get some
Yeah,
for
check it
sure.
out. I
Yeah,
like it.
no, 100%, 100%. It can only do good things. So
So
I think we gotta go, buddy.
we do. We
We're
do. So I'm going to
late.
wrap it up. I'm wrapping
And
up
your
just by
dog
saying
probably needs to go to the potty.
well, this guy's asleep. The other guy's asleep on the floor, but I'll have to get them up and get them out.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm coming to the end of my feeding window, so I've got to eat my dinner.
I
Right.
know you're
But I do
feeding.
want to say I
Yes.
spent an hour and 15 minutes putting you in ruin, but I also don't want to leave you there. So if you want any kind of advice or help about how you can go about finding out what's going on with you or what you can do to fix that if there's something going on, I always offer a 10-minute pick my brain call completely free, which you can do right through my website. And my website is right here, as you see below, drwildcanhelp.com. And when you go there, there's a big blue button right there in front of you. It says book a free discovery call. And that will put you on my schedule for a Tuesday or a Thursday. And we'll take 10 minutes. You can ask me whatever you want to ask me, and I'll give you whatever guidance I can. But also, we talked a lot about toxicity and we talked about inflammation. And I've created 2 online quizzes that people can take right from the comfort of your own home whenever you want. You can do it right from your phone. And if you go to that same website, As you get down to the middle of the page, you're going to see a red button that says take our cellular inflammation quiz and an orange button that says take our cellular toxicity quiz. And those right there will give you a pretty good indication just based on what you're experiencing symptomatically or on your known exposure that you know from your everyday life of where you might fall in there, and actually tallies up your score for you. You don't have to do the math. And I inserted a key so you can tell yourself where you are, if there's mild, moderate, or severe evidence of inflammation or toxicity. And if you have anything that's going on there, that's especially anything that's moderate or severe, please reach out to me and let me give you some guidance about what you can do to fix that. Because I mean, that is the very basis of my mission, right? I want to make sure that I can help as many people who want that help as possible, not end up like my wife did, right? Yeah. So I want to be able to find these causes of inflammation earlier, not just things that can cause fat, right? But the same cell inflammation can lead to diseases that ultimately took her life. So I've learned you got to catch it early, and there are ways to completely reverse it when you do. So that offer's out there.
Thank you, my friend. As always, I can't wait till next month. We'll figure out another topic for August.
And you thought this was going to be a light and happy topic, so I better pick something better next time.
Oh yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna burn belly fat, we're gonna run, we're gonna, eat healthy, maybe do a little fasting. Now I'm like, oh God, what's emitting from this thing right here? What's going on?
We're not going to talk about it.
No, we're not. We're not going to go. We got to go.
Now huffing at me like, let's get out of here.
All right, honey. I will chat with you soon. Yes. Okay.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry we went a bit long today, but Michael had a lot of information that he wanted to share with you all. Again, if you would like a free 10-minute consultation with Michael, please go to his website, drwildcanhelp.com, and click on the book consult, your free consult button, and you can schedule 10 minutes with him on the phone, and he'll assess you right there and give you any sort of recommendation that he has regarding his very long, expansive list of testing that he does that you're not going to be able to get at your doctor's office. So, all right. I am going to check out. It's late. I hope everyone has a terrific evening. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.